Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ramifications, what all this means to U.S. businesses. I am Marvin Cunningham, and with me is Tom Kuchovic, and in Louisville, Pei Zhang. We want to get started here, but before we do, we just want to remind everyone to turn off their microphones so we don't get any feedback through the system, or if you get any cell phone calls or anything like that during the presentation, everyone else won't hear them. Moving right along. Let's see here. There's technical difficulties here for just a second. All right, here we go. Moving right along. Ramifications of China's 12th five-year plan, which is a follow-up to the last two presentations that we've done. Today we're going to discuss the opportunities, business barriers, where will the growth come from, and then reshoring. And to start us off here will be Pei.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to first talk about the business opportunities for foreign investors. And, I think we can easily spend hours and hours on each of the opportunities that I'm going to just talk about. So for today's purpose, I'm going to just talk about briefly identify the most promising or the sectors or business opportunities that I think that is most attractive to foreign or Western companies. Let's get started with the advanced service sector. The advanced professional services will be in high demand during the next 12th five-year plan, particularly like the financial services and high-tech service providers, because China's capital market reform is getting intensified, and the RMB trades on international markets. So I guess foreign finance companies such as banks, security firms, and brokerages would definitely enjoy even more opportunities in China. The infrastructure we are talking about in this sector, we're talking about massive upgrades and refinement projects. If you look at the 12th five-year plan, the list of the projects is very breathtaking. I listed just a couple of the projects in the slides, and this is not an inclusive list. If you take a look at the plan, it is just breathtaking. But of course, there's no mention of how much this huge list of projects will cost, and there's no mention either of from where the money will come to pay for all of this. But if the past is any indication, I think the projects will feature a mix of direct central government expenditures and bank loans to the local governments. The recent huge jump in bank lending supports the concept that the banks will be instrumental in funding this really massive set of infrastructure upgrade. So we will see how the infrastructure, how much progress will be made in the infrastructure sector in the next five-year plan. Next, we can talk about the technology sector. Well, I believe recently I read an article which says that according to the China State Council Information Office, China now has more than 450 million internet users right now, which is about 50% more than the entire population of the U.S. So you can, it's undoubtedly technology sector will be one of the next economic frontier in China. Let me give you an example about the e-commerce. Because with the rapid internet adoption in China, e-commerce is really booming there. Amazon founded in 1994. eBay started its operations in 95. And the Chinese websites offering the same or similar services had a relatively slower beginning. The e-commerce .com, which is a online like similar to Amazon, it was established in 99. Baidu.com, which is a giant search engine in China, started up in 2000, sorry, and Taobao.com, which is a huge online auction and retail website, started up its operations in '03. These Chinese websites had, as I said, has a lower beginning, but now they have reached the same or even exceeded the popularity of their like peers in the United States. In terms of internet traffic, according to a survey, Taobao.com is ranked 15th worldwide, which is higher than both Amazon and eBay. And in terms of e-commerce, the latest trend is the group buying in China. Groupon.com, which probably I believe is the world's largest group buying website, has recently entered the market in China, hoping to get a nice slice of the cake. So considering the explosion of internet users and the online market, the broadband networks and the internet security infrastructures, they are highly demanded. And the other subsector in this technology area is the online gaming, which is a very nice niche market in China. More and more young generations, they're kind of like obsessed with the online gaming, especially the multiplayer like role player game, online game. If you opened up for every single, almost every single website, if I opened up any Chinese website, a online game like advertisement window will always pop out. So it is a very nice market in China right now. The energy sector, well, I mean, this is a huge topic. As I said, I can spend maybe a half day on each of the sections here. One of the key deliverables in the 12 5-year plan is more sustainable growth. So we will see more investments in energy saving, environmental protection, and the new energy. The energy conservation and environmentally friendly products will be the key areas of growth, along with the advanced technology and components. Nuclear, wind, and solar, they are probably the primary or the main three categories in the energy industry that will see a boost in the future. Healthcare is another sector that I believe will have a very great prospect in China. The China's changing demographic landscape presents a very new opportunities in healthcare provision, because as the population ages and because of the one-child policy, China will probably exhaust its demographic dividend from 2015 onwards, and will probably face greater dependency ratios. So to satisfy the needs of the elderly population, the 12 5-year plan encourages investment, including foreign investment, in the healthcare market through more flexible capital controls. The State Council passed a medical reform plan in January 2009 and promised to spend 850 billion yuan by 2011 to provide universal health care to all residents in China. As of September last year, 95% of China's 1.3 billion people were covered by the country's healthcare network to various extents. Well, let me give you an example. My dad, he had a acute tear duct infection just a few weeks ago. So he had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. And when we talked, and he said the only thing he needed to pay is the one-time copay, which is before he was admitted into hospital, which is less than 100 RMB, and the rest of them will be covered by entirely will be covered by the health insurance he had, and he is retired. So you'll see the Chinese residents, I believe Chinese residents, they have enjoyed cheaper medical service and wider access to the national healthcare network since the government initiated the medical reform in 2009. It has been remarkably successful. So with these achievements, the China's health authorities now aim to deepen the ongoing reforms this year. The areas of opportunities, I identify 3 categories here. Medical equipment, we're talking about the medical equipment with advanced technology, such as CT equipment, clinical lab equipment, the respiratory equipment, those kind of things. And with more spending power and a ongoing care for persons' own well-being, people are the drugs and dietary supplements are another area of opportunity. Every time my friends and I when we go back home, we were asked to buy protein supplements or vitamin C or calcium supplements. So it is a very hot market in China right now. The private nursing homes, the government especially encourage investment to build private nursing homes for the elderly, and the target is to have 30 beds in nursing homes per 1,000 elderly population by 2015. Marvin, so I guess you're going to talk about the modern agriculture right now?
Yes, yes. One of the largest areas for foreign investment and for technology growth in the next 5 years is going to be in creating a modern agricultural system in China. To give you an example, the average U.S. farm is roughly 400 acres, depending on state, a little bit more, a little bit less. In China, the average farm is about 1 hectare, which is roughly 2.5 acres. So you have more or less a very labor-intensive agricultural system which feeds 1.3 billion people. As land is being taken over to build new factories and housing and things of that nature, some of the most productive farmland in the country is being built over, and so more marginalized areas are starting to be used. And within this area, consolidation of farmland as people are moving to the cities. Just this week, China announced that it's now more urban than rural for the first time in its history. That trend is expected to continue at least for the next 20 years as people move from the countryside into the cities. But as they do that, it's going to open up the opportunity to really consolidate and make larger farms and of more mechanized agriculture. So the John Deeres of the world, people that supply technology related to that, will do, I think, very well. Also, in consolidation of larger type operations, for example, pork farming is going to become more and more important as the population becomes more affluent and wants to eat more meat. And another area is bioagriculture, and this covers quite a wide range. But obviously, there was the Green Revolution in the 70s with fertilizer and new variations of crops that really helped feed the world and cover an expanding population. And that is really what the government's kind of looking for again. China's already the largest user of fertilizer in the world. However, they realize that not only is it very expensive to do these inputs, but it's also harmful to a certain degree to the ecology of the area. So they're really looking to do more in terms of hybrids and genetic engineering for crops that will allow them to use less fertilizer and to use areas that are more drought stricken, which kind of leads into the next one, being water conservation technology. A lot of areas that farming is being pushed into now are marginal, not so much for the soil, but for the amount of water available. And traditional methods are not necessarily going to work that much longer, especially in northern China. Right now, there's a huge water diversion project that's projected to be finished, I think, at the end of this year, moving water from southern China to northern China. But that's not really a long-term solution. Long-term solution is being able to get by with less, and the technology around that is an excellent opportunity for U.S. companies to take advantage of. The second area I was going to talk about is the logistics and distribution. This is another very hot industry in China right now. One of the hottest areas is cold storage, network distribution. For any of you that have been to China, you'll notice right away that in most restaurants you go to, if they serve fish, the fish are swimming in tanks. If they serve, ducks, and you're in the countryside, that duck might still be alive outside. It's still very much of a, if the animal's alive and you see it before you pick it out, it's safe. But if it's been sitting on ice, you really don't have an idea how long. And so the cold storage network, which includes the trucks to carry stuff, the shipping containers, the warehouses, the coolers in the restaurants, things of that nature, is just in its infancy, and there's a lot of technology and management to make sure that the food is safe to eat. And food safety being a big issue in China, is going to be an area with a lot of investment going into it. Related to that is inland distribution. If you're around the coast, there's a very, very good distribution network. Although the roads are sometimes pretty clogged, it's still just as developed as you would see in anywhere in the Western world. However, as you move west, it really drops off, and so as this starts penetrating inland and with more and more internet users, which kind of leads into the next one, people, if you order something online, you want to get it in a day or two and not a week or two. And setting up the distribution centers, the trucking, the computer systems that track that, the conveyor belts, the racking, all different kinds of stuff like that is going to be a very big growth area in the next 5 years. I think we are ready now for our first poll question right here.
Yep. So the first question will be, what is China's ranking worldwide?
Here we go.
There we go. What is China's ranking worldwide in terms of its macro tax burden? A, second, B, 23rd, C, 48th, D, 63rd. And A will be the highest tax burden and D will be the lowest.
And we'll give everyone here just a few seconds to answer. All right, we'll go ahead and close the poll here. All right, and then we'll go ahead and share the results. All right, as you can see, I guess, Pei, what's the answer to this one?
The answer is A, the second. So China is the second heaviest taxed country in the world. So what is the result here, Marvin?
We have 15% got it right, with 31% choosing B and 46% choosing C.
All right. Well, according to the 2009 Tax Misery and Reform Index released by Forbes magazine, China is as I said, is the second heaviest taxed country in the world, following France. B, 23rd, actually is India. United States is C, 48th, and Hong Kong is the 63rd. So we're going to talk about the tax burden just in a few minutes in the business barriers for foreign investors. And first, we're going to talk about indigenous innovation. So what is this? Let me give you a background information about if you are not familiar with the concept yet. In 2006, the Beijing government initiated a policy which is basically some guidelines intended to reduce dependence on foreign technology. The policy was first clearly linked to government procurement in 2009. So one of the most eye-catching side of the policy is to promote indigenous innovation through government procurement. The policy required government departments to create a master list of indigenous innovation products, which will receive preferential treatment in government procurement. And in order to, I think I heard an echo. Is there something wrong with my side? Because I didn't turn off I didn't turn on the cell phone, but I just want to make sure that, because I hear some echo on my side.
We're good here. We don't hear it.
All right. Okay. Cool. All right. So in order to qualify as indigenous innovation, the IP rights must be owned by a Chinese company, and the trademark must have been initially registered in China, and it cannot be restricted by any related foreign brands. So this policy received very wide criticism from the Western world, especially the major technology firms, on the grounds of unfair discrimination. Because for those major technology firms in the Western world, usually the IP rights are first acquired abroad, and those IP rights are rarely transferred to the Chinese WOFE or JV. Due to concerns about China's ability to protect IP rights. If it is necessary, the foreign parent company will license the IP rights to the Chinese subsidiaries with a lot of restrictions written in the licensing agreement. So in those circumstances, those major technology firms may not be able to meet the definition of indigenous innovation. They could be excluded from the Chinese government procurement market, which is about worth tens of billions of our US dollar per month. So according to a survey by U.S.-China Business Council, in the survey, the respondents were asked the question whether the policy is a concern for their companies. 57% of the respondents says yes. So under the pressure, the government, the policy has been modified several times in the past, and in the summer last year, the government the central government promised to delink the indigenous innovation from government procurement. Despite the government pledge, many believe that the local government may not have yet adjust their policies to conform to the national policy. The European Union Chamber of Commerce in China recently issued a report on European business experience in competing for public contracts in China. In the report, it is stated that although the delinking of indigenous innovation from national procurement was a major positive development, the international business communities remain concerned that discriminatory policy might continue to be enforced locally despite the national commitments to the contrary. Right now, there's no such national catalog. However, a fair number of provincial and municipal level governments may have already released their own indigenous innovation product catalogs. For example, the Shanghai catalog, listed only 2 indigenous innovation products from foreign invested enterprises out of a total of more than 500. of 42 products listed in the Beijing catalog, only one came from the foreign investment enterprise, and on Nanjing's list there was none. So similarly, the European Union Chamber report refers to a fragmentation of the Chinese government procurement market because the sub-central authorities develop their own procedures, procurement catalogs, and unwritten procedures. So I will say that don't get too excited about the changes to the indigenous innovation. And many believe that the policy is further part of a broader effort to build up or protect domestic industries and create national champion enterprises. The national champion concept is that China should have national firms with ability to compete in the global markets. And the fact is almost all those firms that may qualify as national champions are state-owned enterprises. And the next barrier will be higher, probably will be another area that may cause some concern is the higher operating cost. The wage, land, utilities, energy, and capital, they are all on the rise. The higher cost for compliance with more stringent environmental standards will also add to the operating cost. The additional taxes and levies I guess effective last year, any entity, including foreign companies, they must pay urban maintenance and construction tax and educational surcharges, as long as the entity is obliged or required to pay VAT, consumption tax, and business tax. So before the new policy, in the past, foreign enterprises and foreign representative office, they won't require to pay any urban maintenance and construction tax, nor the educational surcharge. The rate of urban maintenance and construction tax varies among the residence areas of taxpayer. In the urban area, the rate is 7%. In town, the rate is 5%. And the educational surcharge is levied by the rate of 3% equally. We're going to talk about the tax reform a little bit in our presentation. Another barrier or another concern that I think that you may be interested in learning is the slow tax and administrative reforms. The tax and administrative reforms, they may not keep pace with the business needs. Based on the Forbes magazine survey, China, as I said, China is the second with the harshest tax regime in the world. So the overall macro tax burden is really relatively high in China. There are many hidden fees not in the names of taxation. Some of the tax are under the name of the local, like Commission of Industrial and Commerce, and all sorts of government authorities. They may not be titled as tax. They may just say you need to pay this kind of fee or that fee, but those are some kind of sort of hidden tax fees. In the 12th five-year plan, there's no clear target set for the reduction of the aggregate tax burden for the enterprises and consumers. So in the course of the next 5-year plan, the individual income tax threshold is to be raised, but higher tax brackets, which will include middle-class consumers, will see a overall tax increase. the administrative reform, I put a nice cartoon or picture here. You'll see a government public official is making presentation in a meeting, and there's a scissor, and the Chinese words there saying that, so basically said, we're gonna just don't say any cut and dry words that has no meaning at all. And I will say especially in the local level of the government, if a meeting, if there's a 1 hour meeting or 1 hour speech by a local government official, probably 50% of the speech is involved cut and dried meaningless words. So we're gonna talk. The administrative reform is slow as well. There are many layers of authority in China. And there's no inefficient collaboration among ministries. Let me give you a very just a real example. We have a client, and the client has a wolfie in Beijing, and the client wants to increase the number of directors on the board of Beijing. So which in the States will be a very small deal. You just need to draft a few resolutions, and then the board will be increased. But in China, at least in Beijing, you have to get the government two kinds of government approvals from two different authorities in China. One is from the Beijing Commerce Industry and Commerce, and one from the Beijing Municipal Commission of Commerce, which are totally two separate authorities, and they have different requirements regarding the documents that you have to submit to get the approval to increase your own board of directors, and in the Beijing has like a couple of districts, and the client's wolfie is located in Chaoyang district, and the Chaoyang district has a different rule from the central, the Beijing Municipal Commission of Commerce. So we initially submitted our documents in last October, and right now it's still pending because of the different rules and different requirements, and the authority, the officers working in those authorities, sometimes they don't have enough knowledge about the laws and the requirements. So we originally submitted a shareholder resolution because to increase the number of directors of the board, you have to get by pursuant to, according to the bylaws of the company, the WOFI, and pursuant to the Chinese law on foreign investment for foreign invested companies, you have to the shareholder meeting is the highest authority for the WOFI. So we submitted shareholder resolution, and unfortunately it was turned down because the officer said that we need to see the board resolutions no matter what. The shareholder resolution is only helpful, but not enough. We need to see resolutions from the board to increase the board, the number of directors on the board. So no matter what you say, no matter how you explain that the shareholder resolution is enough, they don't buy it at all. The tension between central and local government, in the reality, the local governments have tremendous power in interpreting and executing the law. So the national rules vary widely. Some local governments, they choose to apply Beijing requirements as a minimum standard, and other local governments, they may loosen the Beijing government's requirements for the right price. So the bottom line is, the stronger the local government is, or the stronger the local economy is, the more powerful the local leaders become. So as an example of for the tension between central and local governments is the indigenous innovation policy. So as I said, just as I just mentioned earlier, the Beijing government pledged to delink the indigenous policy from the government procurement, but still in the local level, many local governments, they still have their own catalogs. So there's definitely many exciting opportunities, but there's still a lot of challenges for you. So the bottom line is to do your very good homework before you get into China. Marvin?
All right. We're going to go ahead and launch our second poll question here. All right. China's trade surplus as a percentage of GDP was 1.7% in 2000. What was it in 2011? And the options are A, 1.7%, B, 2.2%, C, 5.2%, and D, 10.6%. And we'll give everyone just a minute here to respond. All right, we'll give it about 5 more seconds and go ahead and close this. All right. Polling's closed, and we'll go ahead and display these numbers here. All right, the correct answer is B, 2.2%. 2011 trade surplus as a percentage of GDP. It looks like most people voted for C or D, it being a higher percentage. Yeah, it's interesting how things are changed, and that kind of leads in. We're going to close this out, and that leads into the first part of where China's growth is going to come from in the next 5-year plan. As you can see on here, really from say 2004, 2005 up through last year, there was a big, basically bell curve in terms of the percentage of GDP that China got through its trade surplus. And that was a lot of, during that time, was driving a lot of their growth. That in capital investment. This graph actually doesn't show it on here, but in 2011 would be dropping down to right here 2.2%, and that's some circles say that this year the trade surplus might actually end up being negative for the first time since let's say the early 90s. So just kind of gives you an idea that, you know, just because things were like that in the last decade does not necessarily mean that the trade surpluses are really what's going to be driving GDP growth overall in China. What drives it right now? Roughly, and this number is kind of an aggregate over the last few years because the numbers changed dramatically, but roughly 40% consumer spending, 40% capital investment, 10% public spending, 5% exports, and then the last 5% is a random trade things, like for example the money that China earns off of its huge foreign exchange reserves and things of that nature kind of fall into this. But as you can see, in the last decade, consumer spending has definitely been a big part of it, but capital investment has also been a very large part. And public spending, which you would think would be, you know, a relatively large part of China's GDP growth, has actually only been around 10%, so not near as much of an impact as one would imagine here. Moving on, this graph is kind of confusing, but really what I want to point at your attention to is the red part of this graph, and this is basically going back to 1996 through 2010, where GDP growth comes from in different areas: export, government consumption, fixed investment, and private consumption. But the red is fixed investment, which has been a very large part in the last decade of China's GDP growth. In fact, in 2009, while the rest of the world was recovering, China had a huge push starting in 2008 into 2009 to spend a lot of money on very large capital projects, anywhere from trains, subways, new port facilities, huge housing projects, all different types of stuff that's really kind of bumped that number up and supported the high level of growth there. But going forward into the future, it's really not a sustainable way to grow your economy. So more or less, what the government expects and what's in their 5-year plan, and what most analysts expect as well too, is that really in this 5-year plan, in between now and the beginning of 2016, that consumption is going to take over as the main economic driver in China. And there are really arguments for and against this happening. Currently, it's relatively low in comparison to the rest of the world. China this year, its percent of consumption was 33%. In the U.S., it's 70 in terms of economic activity, so less than half. Arguments for are that people will continue to migrate from rural to urban areas, driving household consumption. And the basic part of this argument is that basically a peasant moves in from the farm where they've basically grown their own food and lived, hand to mouth at a very, low economic activity. They move to a city, they get a job in a factory, they get an apartment, they buy a refrigerator, a TV, and all these other household type consumption items. That's kind of the argument, although moving forward from now, China just announced, I think I mentioned earlier this week, that it now has more than half of its population is urban. So the real question to ask yourself is how urban is China going to get? And the number in South Korea, for example, was in the mid-80s. In the U.S., I do believe it's about 73%. Regardless of what it is, the number is certainly not going to be 100%. So we've more than halfway moved through that process of moving from rural to urban areas, and how much that's really going to drive consumption is in the next 5 years is left to be seen. The next argument for is that consumption is higher than official numbers state, simply due to the underreporting of the gray income and assets. And this actually is a very good argument as to why the consumption number in China reads as low as it does. And simple answer being that maybe it isn't. Maybe consumption is in the 40 percentile simply because of the large amount of gray assets that are owned both by private individuals and public officials that they don't officially report, owning and spending and things of that nature. It's an interesting argument, though, because certainly in the U.S., then, how much of our economy is made up of things like the drug trade? I don't think we include those in official numbers, and so to kind of taking account of that, and this is an interesting argument, but one that might have validity. The third argument is normally that wage growth will be higher, or being higher than inflation will drive people to spend more and not save more. Basically, the argument goes that as the social safety net is strengthened and people have more income, rather than save that money, which is traditionally what people in Chinese society have done, that they're going to go out and spend that. I think over the long period of time this is true, but it takes a long time to change cultural values. And certainly one of the strongest ones in China is to save. And in the newer generation, maybe less so, and I think that's certainly the case, but it's going to take a long time before people that grew up with hardships are willing to, instead of save that money for a rainy day, take a vacation to Hunan Island or something of that nature. Arguments against consumption-led growth, and then this would be kind of, well, if the economists are wrong and consumption isn't what drives Chinese growth, and Chinese growth would not be as high as most people think it will be in the next 5 years. One you mentioned already, but a lack of a real social safety net. And this it's certainly coming into play now, as Pei was talking about healthcare getting much better than it was even just a few years ago. But there are a lot of other things that are involved in that, and a lot of that has to do with where your household is registered. If you live in a city and you're registered in the countryside, you basically have no access to that social safety net unless you go back to your home village. And so until that system is kind of reformed, it's very difficult. Roughly half of the people living in cities now, something about 270 million to 300 million people, lack any access to the social services that are within that city. Roughly a little bit less than a quarter of the population. So that's one reason why people moving to the cities might not spend as much money as some economists think. Next one is negative growth rate in household savings discourages consumption. This argument is true, I think, in high inflationary times, although the Chinese government has done an excellent job really in reducing the amount of inflation. Earlier this year, even 6 months ago, we were looking at 6+% inflation in China with the interest on a standard savings account, which is how most people save their money in China, being roughly 3.25%. So people were losing more than 2, sometimes 3 or 4% on their savings just by leaving them in the bank. That's obviously changed quite a bit in the last 6 months. It's kind of left to be seen where that will go. But as long as there is a negative savings rate, and not savings rate, but a negative return on savings, it's hard to see how people won't try to save more for a rainy day. Land confiscation discourages consumption in rural households. I think this is certainly true. If your land is your main source of livelihood and it could be taken at any time, or you think it might be taken in the next few years because that city that used to be 5 miles away is now on your doorstep, it's going to really hold you back from spending money on household goods. And finally, consumption growth has been artificially high, driven by the government subsidies policies. I think to a certain extent this is certainly true. We've seen in the last couple months a lot of policies towards getting rural areas to be able to buy subsidies to be able to buy things like washing machines, refrigerators, cars of that nature have expired, and consumption has dropped off, as has economic growth in the last few months. Now there's a lot of other macro issues that could be tied into that, so really only time will tell. But one sure sign that the government's worried about consumption will be if they introduce another round of more or less cash for clunker type things, or subsidies for people living, especially in rural areas, to buy consumer goods. And with that, we'll lead into the next poll question here.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to us a little bit about this. And before we ask this question, we're talking about the ramifications of what's going on in China, the changes that have taken place, and the plan changes going forward. And it's a very popular subject these days, but you have to include a discussion of reshoring when it comes to that, businesses coming back to the United States. And that's what this next section is going to be about. So to lead that off, this question that we're going to share now, or talk about now, is: when adjusted for productivity, what percentage of United States labor cost will China's labor cost be in the year 2015? So the answers are A, 21, B, 33, C, 44%, or D, 56%. Let me wait just a minute. Leave everybody vote where they think that's going to fall.
This means right now. It says will be.
The cost will be in 2015. What will it be in 2015? I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results. You can see that the results given there, 75% said it's D, 56%, and 17% said 44, and it drops off. And this has got a lot of attention. If you can, let's go ahead to that next slide, Marvin.
Yep.
The actual answer, right, is that in 2000, labor cost was 13%, adjusted for productivity was 23%. By 2015, it will be 44%. Now, a new study just came out in I think it was last week, that had that number up to 61%. So those 56% folks who answered there's a study out there that supports that as well. Although I haven't had time to become familiar enough with that study to see if those numbers seem to be defensible. Either way, the point is very, very strongly made that labor costs in China have gone up enough that by 2015 they're going to be someplace around half of the labor cost here when adjusted for productivity. And of course, there are other things that come into play when you're making that cost decision on whether whether your products will be made in China or made here in the States. This is going to affect folks out there who maybe planning to make in China and export back to the U.S. But it's also, if your business is going to be selling to anybody who's doing that now, if you're in the services sector and you're trying to service those people, all of that is going to come into play. Some of the other things that are important in your currency, the RMB has strengthened 28% versus U.S. dollar since the Chinese government allowed it to begin to float, if you will, or not really float, but has begun to take steps to allow it to strengthen. This is a little graph. I guess this kind of even fits more on the editorial side. I don't want to interject myself into this whole discussion that the Chinese trade surplus with the United States is entirely or largely dependent on where they peg the RMB. But what you can see here is since the beginning of 2007, when the RMB was just under 8 per dollar, till today, it's now under 6.5 per dollar. But the trade surplus has actually grown. That line going across shows you the RMB. The blue bars coming from the top down show you where the trade surplus is. Now you saw that it weakened greatly in 2009, 2010 in the depths of the recession, and it's kind of returning to the trend that it showed earlier as the recession has ebbed. So I think there's a lot of discussion there, but the strengthening of the RMB is not the only thing driving the trade surplus with the United States. Some other things are affecting it, and one of which is some of the stuff coming back to the U.S. So going forward, some of those other things, transportation, even though the economy has been as weak as it's been over the last 5 years, costs are up over 25% in the last 5 years. Another thing about transportation, people don't realize how severe this problem can be, but about 10,000 containers coming from Asia are lost each year. That's actually a little bit more than one per hour, the number of hours you have in a year. When I say lost, I don't mean they don't know where they went. I guess they may not know where some of them went. We're talking about damage. We're talking about things, falling off a ship into the water. We're talking about things like that, and it's over 10,000 a year. So there's that cost advantage as shipping from China has increased. So are some of the problems that come with shipping from China. You get into inventory, of course, the carrying cost is much higher. You're allowing for the inventory on the water, inventory preparing to ship in China, as well as inventory that you have to keep here. Once you get it here, you have to store it. We're going to talk just to show a picture in a minute about some damage that we had, but the damage that comes across, and the risk of obsolescence. Anytime your inventory is up, the market's changing as quickly as they did, design changes to products, the risk of obsolescence, of course, increases as well. This next picture, this is a Long-Stanton experience. This is before and after of a container we shipped from our Asia operation to our customer. That picture on the right is what the customer saw when they opened a container at their place. We had no idea until we heard from the customer that there had been any problems with this container in any way. So this is just one of those things that you deal with when you come from. It's one of the things that's driving some of the reshoring back to the United States. There are also, of course, political and cultural considerations that lead into this. Everybody's probably aware by this time about VAT tax. The way the Chinese use the VAT tax is very interesting. They have some energy issues, so their VAT rebates may drop on products that are high energy users. They have pollution issues. Their VAT rebates may drop on things that create a lot of pollution. They want to move your industry from near the coast inland. So the VAT for the same product produced in an inland province will be reduced, or has been reduced in many cases, from those in the provinces along the coast. So politically, they use that VAT to try to get what they want from countries that are exporting. Forced technology transfer is another issue. A couple months ago, the United States automakers were trying to increase, or wanting to increase, the production of highly fuel efficient and either electric vehicles in China. Hey, that was a great idea as long as you shared the technology. They've done that with not just United States companies, of course, European companies, stuff around the bullet train, around their nuclear and aerospace industries. They've done that as well. It's just something that's out there. Intellectual property has been one of the things that's been out there forever. People have heard all the stories. A while back, great little interesting stories of the entire Apple store was not an Apple store. It looked just like one. The employees dressed just like Apple employees. That's still going on, and that's still a problem. And then finally, just incomplete or inaccurate information. And, it happens all over the place. I think a good example, the Chinese government reports mass incidents, which are protests, if you will. And It's very difficult to get an exact number, how many people have to be involved in the call it a mass incident. But within the Chinese government, the central governing body may want to let you know that there aren't a whole lot of mass incidents. They'll report one number. The police, though, they want you to know that you need them, and they're going out there and addressing all that. They'll report another number that's higher than the central government's number. So it's still at times, very difficult to get accurate information, and that goes into the business world as well. We do a lot with steel. During that recession, there were a lot of questions about steel and how much steel was going to Asia from here and from Asia to here. And one of the big problems was that most of those folks doing the analysis had a lot of concerns and questions on how accurate the production volumes in China were, and made it very difficult to try to figure out what was going to go on with pricing. This is a picture just to kind of talk a little bit about that VAT. The government, this was actually a couple years ago, announced a VAT change. I think it was on a Friday. That would be effect on Monday for everything that wasn't on the water. And this is in Shanghai. This is the main road going to the port at Shanghai. And there's everybody trying to get everything on the water because they had basically over the weekend to react to a VAT change. So it's just one of those things you have to be aware of. It's very unpredictable. When you talk about reshoring, in the United States, the government leaks that they might do something to see what their response is. People complain. Sometimes it gets changed. Sometimes it doesn't. Finally, a month, 2, 3, 6 from now, it gets put in place. Doesn't happen quite that way there. It was a Friday to Monday on this day, and that picture was actually taken, as we said, on one of the main roads into the port at Shanghai. A couple of just examples of reshoring that some of you may already know about or may not. I used a couple of these in a presentation I gave a couple months ago. But Masterlock, returning production from China to a 90-year-old Milwaukee factory. Even with a union workforce in the Milwaukee factory, they believe they have a major cost advantage. They did have a major cost advantage. They brought their stuff back. It's pretty much back now. It says returning. It's actually pretty much returned. Productivity and rising China costs are the reasons. I actually called and talked to the VP who made this decision. He pointed out something a lot of people don't think about when it comes to productivity, and that is, in the U.S. you justify that $250,000 piece of equipment or that $3 million capital project, and that labor savings is one of the major reasons that are used to justify productivity projects. Well, when the labor, which it has been in China, is much less, it takes a lot more labor savings to justify productivity. So their low labor has in some ways hurt their ability to increase productivity, because some of the cost justification that might exist in other places doesn't exist there. Another example, a little closer to home for some of us, Louisville, Kentucky, General Electric, making about $1 billion investment there. They're planning to add about 1,000 employees, and it's mostly water heaters, but that's really what's coming back. It's going to take their U.S. appliance production. It's one move. Right now, 33% of those appliances produced in the U.S. When this is complete, that'll go to 40%. And there, we talked about damage. The three reasons that GE cites for this move: damage in transit, the cost of having a traveling quality staff to go to China to check on quality, and approximately double the inventory cost of what they can have from here. So some of these other, some of these different reasons. These are the actual reasons General Electric cited for their move back here. One that's even more, I guess, a little more close to home for us, because that's happening with us here at Long-Stanton. That's a picture of a brisker, if you're not familiar with it, that you're looking at right now. The brisker is the size of a very large bread box. It's got a heating element in it, and it is used to keep crackers and snacks and other such things, cereal, from absorbing moisture, if you will. It kind of removes that moisture from losing its taste or the quality of the product. It's a upscale type of product. It's very popular, or more popular, I should say, in higher humidity areas. It's produced by a Cincinnati area company, and it's now produced at Long-Stanton. But the reason it came back here, number one, ongoing quality issues. Again, a little bit of a upper end or higher end product, and quality just had to be good every time. That wasn't happening. Delivery issues, some of those related to quality and some not. And in some cases, it's a smaller business, and they were unable to deal with all the communication reliability problems. They didn't have that traveling quality staff to send to China. They didn't have that. But another thing that happened is this move actually started in the summer. These guys had trouble getting their tooling out of China. A lot of things delayed it. We weren't able to go into production at Long-Stanton until the 1st of December, but we were here. So unlike China, we were still able to get several hundred of these units in stores before Christmas, even though production didn't start on the 1st of December. We literally had parts being produced on December 15th, December 16th, and to the stores and into stores for that last shopping week before Christmas. You're not going to be able to get that, obviously, from Asia. So reshoring is very real. You know, companies our size have seen it. Companies GE size have seen it, and it's definitely one of the things that is happening as a result of many of these things that we just talked about in China.
All right. I just wanted to circle back again to the first slide that we talked about because I think it's a very good rubric for companies that are looking to do business in China or to expand or to launch a product line overseas. These four things. What are your opportunities? How do you fit into what's going on in China? What are the barriers to your business? Truly what they are, not just, we'll figure it out, because a lot of times people will tell you no problem, but it ends up being a problem. Where the growth's going to come from? Where do you fit in there? Is your product really a good fit for China or not? There are a lot of them out there that are great fits, and there are a lot of them out there that just don't translate. And so, before you spend a lot of money figuring that out, it'd be definitely to your advantage. And finally, the reshoring part of it. If you're a company that has had things made overseas for years, it might be time to look at reshoring, and not just to the U.S., but if you're in the apparel business, you might be looking at Vietnam or Bangladesh or Cambodia or something like that. It depends on your company, but if you can kind of look at these four areas, I think that it'll help you out quite a bit in making important business decisions. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Our contact information is on here, and we'll leave it up here for a few minutes. If you have any questions, comments, we'd be happy to talk to you about what you're doing now or what you're planning to do. So with that, thank you very much, and have a great day.